So let me go ahead and get set up here. Alrighty. Josie, how does that look?
It looks great to me.
Let me get my notes going. And as we get started, I just want to welcome everybody to our webinar on IET Overview on Single Set of Learning Objectives. My apologies in advance as I am recovering from strep throat. You know how it goes with your kids, I'm bound to get it too. But anyway, I'm glad to be here. So my apologies for my raspy voice, but I have my tea on the side and we're going to have a great time today. So let's get started with our session for today. We have our welcome. I'd like to know, what is your claim to fame? Name a time you had an encounter with a famous person, and go ahead and post that in the chat, please. And I'm eager to find out your responses. Let's see, what is your claim to fame? Have you met any famous people? Have you interacted? And I think the folks in Nevada have like a leg up, because you are in like the mega of the mecca where all Hollywood elites show up. So let me move this here. Thank you for posting it in the chat, Josie. Oh my gosh, Gail, you met Sheila E. at a concert? Oh, love her music. Oh, your mom. Hey, by association, you met her too. That's so great. Let me see. Gladys says, you were on stage with Enrique Iglesias and he kissed you? Wow. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. I am so jealous. Nancy says, you saw Bart Connor and Nadia Comaneci, really, in Chicago. Like, were they doing some type of tour, or were they? Oh, they were shopping. Oh my gosh! Did you get any autographs? That is so great. Oh, that is really nice. I love gymnastics, and they were really great gymnasts. Oh, you weren't brave enough. A long time ago in another life, I used to work in security. I was a security guard. I was trying to pay off my school bills. It was one of the 3 jobs that I had at the time. And one of my assignments, I got pulled in, and my manager called me and he said, I need someone who could discreetly take our guest around the mall through the back doors. And I think he would be great for the job. And I was like, okay, well, who is it? And he's like, I can't tell you, but I'm going to introduce you. But I have to tell you, discretion is the name of the game. Okay. So I go downstairs, and in this office, I see that it's Steven Spielberg. Oh my gosh, I started freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're Steven Spielberg. My manager just grabbed me by my shoulders and said, you're done for today. So I didn't do so well. Okay, let me see. Adrian, you said that in your teens, you were a receptionist and you met the Red Hot Chili Peppers guys. Oh my gosh, Tupac and Neil Diamond. Oh, were you singing like Sweet Caroline when you saw Neil? That is great. I see. Marianne, oh, you flew to Vegas, between Vegas and Sacramento, and you sat next to the mayor at the time, Kevin Johnson. And he told you should buy all the real estate in the region. And you could, because it was about to blow up. You didn't listen, but you wish you had. Those coulda, woulda, shoulda. That is so cool. What a really great conversation. Brenda, you shook hands with Hillary Clinton in 2015. Awesome. Marianne says that you interviewed Donald Trump. Wow. In Palm Beach, back when you were a young reporter. Wow, that is so interesting. We should all just gather around for like a cocktail hour. I'm sure the stories would be great that everyone would be sharing. So thank you so much for posting that and assisting. We're going to go ahead and move on for time's sake, but keep on posting those in the chat. And so for today's agenda, we're going to cover the 4 phases of advanced IET. Specifically, we're going to go into phase 3, develop and implement, which is where we're going to pull the SSLOs from. We're going to have an overview of the IET program design process and share some of the resources and toolkits that are available. And we'll talk about the integrated learning objective components, followed up by our wrap-up. But first, I'd like to pass it over to Marianne to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Liz, and it is great to see all of you again. I think last time, the last webinar we were at together, I gave the review of the latest resources. So in the interest of time, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Liz, for preparing this session. And I know you're very busy, and making time for us, for this group, is just really valued and appreciated. And likewise, Josie Cleveland, our extremely competent and extremely wonderful technical support associate. Thank you very much for coordinating and organizing the day. And with that, I will hand it back. And I believe to Nancy, if you have a word of greeting to start us out.
Thank you. I will very quickly say that I realized the need for this when we were going through a new form that we're requiring starting with the new program year in July 1. When I was trying to explain single set of learning objectives and found that I couldn't do a very good job explaining it. So I think that was really what hit home as far as needing this content. So really appreciate Liz doing this today and pulling it together quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you so much, Nancy. And I gotta say, this is not an easy task. There's a lot that is involved in the single set of learning objectives, but we're gonna go ahead and work on this together. And of course, if you have any questions through the session, make it as interactive as possible. Go ahead and post those in the chat, and Josie will go ahead and let me know if there's a question in the chat. I have it open, but in case I missed something, Josie, if you'd be so kind to let me know. And even after the session, if you have questions, just let us know. So we're going to go into our training goals. By the end of our session, we're going to identify the advanced IET resources and materials. We're going to consider all the components that are necessary in the development and the process for developing those single set of learning objectives for IET. As a reminder, all of the content is derived from the Advanced IET material and project, which is funded by Octave, and it provides the technical assistance to expand the availability and quality of IET programs to effectively support diverse adult learner pathways to high quality careers. In today's session, we're going to be using a lot of the resources from the toolkit, and Josie has posted that in the chat. Thank you, Josie. So for those of you who may be new to IET, or if it's a refresher to many, I will be referencing this toolkit, which is centered around the 4 key phases of IET design and implementation: research and assess, design and plan, develop and implement, and evaluate and improve. It contains several resource links and desk aids, including the IET assessment tool, which I would recommend is a really great starting point. I would invite you to download this link, because I will be referencing some of the items within this toolkit. So let's talk about the IET program design process. In today's segment, today's session is just a little spot among the 4 phases that we are talking about. There are 4 phases. We are centering our approach on that 3rd phase. And within that 3rd phase, there are key tasks. It is orient staff and stakeholders and provide professional development, developing the IET curricula, developing program materials, tools, and procedures, and implementing the IET program and collection of data. Our focus today will be on the steps for developing a standards-based IET curricula around a single set of learning objectives. The IET toolkit introduces 2 approaches for accomplishing this, which I would encourage you to explore outside of this webinar. As you know, WIOA requires that the IET curricula be designed and developed around a single set of learning objectives. But what is a single set of learning objectives, and what is its relationship to integrated learning objectives, or ILOs? For those of you who either participated in the BDC or ADC training sessions, or even accessed the IET resources from links, you may recall that we spent time discussing which activities fell, thank you, into the adult education and literacy activities, workforce preparation activities, and workforce training categories. And we learned that it's possible for some activities to belong in more than one category, depending on their context. First, an IET must be of sufficient intensity and quality. One way to ensure sufficient quality is to base your IET on the most rigorous research available, particularly with regards to improving reading, writing, mathematics, and English proficiency of eligible individuals. Additionally, as you design your IET program, remember that the elements of your IET program must be provided concurrently and contextually, ensuring that all three IET components, the adult education and literacy activities, workforce preparation activities, and workforce training activities, simultaneously occur within the overall scope of the IET program, and use occupationally relevant instructional materials to contextualize the adult education and literacy standards being taught. The program activities must be organized to function cooperatively as a whole. Finally, sorry, got trigger happy there. Finally, the IET program must be designed around a single set of learning objectives, or SSLOs, that identify specific adult education content standards, workforce preparation skills, and workforce training competencies. You'll see how together the individual integrated learning objectives you create for the entire curricula become the IET's program's single set of learning objectives. Keep these three components in mind as we move into the development process of the single set of learning objectives, or SSLOs. So let's talk about how we develop those SSLOs. Let's start with a quick check-in of how you feel prepared today. There's a poll that Josie's about to share. Thank you, Josie. And there are 5 questions. How prepared do you feel in writing integrated learning objectives? You are, number 1, what are learning objectives? Number 2, I know what they are, but I do not feel prepared to write them. 3, I need guidance before I begin to write them. 4, I know how to write them now. And 5, I could teach others to write them. So go ahead and post your responses. And I see that they're coming in. I see that many of you are falling within the middle section of between 2 and 3. Great. Excellent. And Josie, if you don't mind sharing the results. And the majority shows that I need guidance before I begin to write them, with 73%. And then 3 of you indicated you know what they are, you don't feel prepared to write them just yet. So thank you so much for participating in that. And that helps me identify where we are for today. So thank you for sharing, Josie. And we're going to go ahead and move on. So what are integrated learning objectives, or ILOs? I realize there are many people on this training today, from instructors to program directors, but I am certain that learning objectives are not a new concept to you. So you can find this content that we're about to explore on page 60 of the IET toolkit. Effective learning objectives describe what learners will be able to do upon completion of the major instructional units within the IET program to demonstrate competency. They include 3 key elements. First, conditions under which the learner will demonstrate competency. There are the specific circumstances or contexts in which the learning will be applied. You can think of this as the what. Number 2, the behavior the learner will perform using action verbs. These behaviors should be expressed using action verbs that clearly indicate what the learner is expected to do. You can think of this as the how. And finally, the criteria by which competency will be measured. Let's establish the criteria by which competency will be measured. These criteria set the standards for performance and provide clear benchmarks for success. This third element can be thought of as the how much. By clearly defining the conditions, behaviors, and criteria, we ensure that learners are not only equipped with the necessary knowledge, but are capable of applying it in real-world context. Now let's see how the individual integrated learning objectives, or ILOs, work together to form the single set of learning objectives. The IET planning tool has a single set of learning objectives template beginning on page 157 of the toolkit. And you can use this as a guide to develop your single set of learning objectives and organize the skills, competencies, and standards for your units of instruction. We'll practice doing that a little later in the session. You can see that the template includes a field to enter the name of your IET program at the top and then your single set of learning objectives right below the title. Then on the next page, you'll see that there's a separate table that you can copy and paste for each unit of your instruction in your curriculum. In the top area of this table, you'll enter the integrated learning objective or objectives for the unit of instruction. To be clear, integrated learning objectives should include all three required components of adult ed and literacy, workforce preparation, skills and competencies, workforce training activities, and you may have more than one learning objective per unit. Below that, you'll notice that you'll enter the skills and competencies for each of the three required components, as well as the state adult education standards associated with the objective or objectives for that unit of instruction. Each integrated learning objective you create for your units of instruction across the curricula combine to make the single set of learning objectives, or SSLOs. So the entire list of objectives would be compiled within the top gray section. So I know I've talked a lot, threw a lot of things at you. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through that process. Any questions so far? And if you don't have questions now, feel free to post them later, or you can unmute. I don't see any questions yet, but maybe people are typing. I'm going to move on, and if I see a question, I'll pause and respond. We've briefly reviewed the importance of learning objectives and their principal components. Now we'll look at a modified approach to developing SSLOs. These 4 steps include: the first step in this approach is to identify the workforce training skills and competencies. Thinking with the end in mind, what will our students be able to attain at the end of this IET program? Next, you'll identify relevant state adult education standards and academic literacy skills. Then you'll identify the workforce preparation skills. Once you've identified the skills and competencies for all 3 required components, as well as the adult education standards, you'll create 1 or more learning objectives for each unit of instruction by integrating the identified workforce training skills, state adult education standards and skills, and as well as the workforce preparation skills. Again, the learning objectives you create across the curriculum will combine to become the SSLO. Part of this step is to confirm alignment of your SSLO with your program goals. You can find a different version of the same concept in the toolkit on pages 65 through 66. You'll use this template to organize all the required elements into one place. We'll explore each of the components and how they are integrated to form a single integrated learning objective, an ILO. Keep in mind that the development of an ILO is a subset of the collection of ILOs, which forms the single set of learning objectives. Ensuring that you are always in alignment with your program level goals, you'll start identifying the workforce training skills and competencies learners in your program will need to accomplish them. Typically, you'll start with the existing occupational training and identify or refine the workforce training skills and competencies that are covered in the curriculum. review the occupational skills standards that support mastery of the training content. You'll also work with a training partner or industry lead to identify the specific knowledge, skills, and competencies needed to accomplish the program-wide level goals. And you'll work with your training partner to identify workforce training skills and competencies needed to successfully complete the training and obtain industry-recognized credentials. Once you've identified these, you will base the construction of the workforce training skills and competencies within your SSLO, which is located at the bottom left of the template. So I'll be referring to this template through the remainder of the session, and we're going to be building it out step by step. Finding specific occupational knowledge, skills, and competencies is not a secret, but the trick is finding the regulating source. In other words, it is best to begin with the issuing credential authority for your IET design. There are 3 sources of information to consider: occupational skills standards, training partners, consider those at the national and/or state level regulating entities, and industry leaders. Again, your training partners and industry leaders will inform your instruction. Therefore, consider their ongoing involvement to ensure alignment to the end of mind of earning an industry recognized credential. So in the chat, I'm going to ask if there are some additional resources that you can think of where you can access workforce training competencies information. And what I've done thus far is I've posted some examples. On the left-hand side, you see it's the Nevada Fire Service Certification System Manual on how to become a firefighter level 1. There's also a welding manual and a Nevada driver's license manual to earn the CDL class A and C. Can you think of any others? And I'm looking at the chat. Adrian says, have a copy of the instructor materials for the course. Yes, that is important. So as you add your comments in the chat, I've used a resource from Florida, just to give a different perspective, that depicts the workforce training competencies for a patient care technician. In this particular case, the state has outlined the required competencies for a nursing assistant, or PCT in this case. One of those is considered 16.18. And I will use this information to help frame my curriculum design and integrate into my SSLOs. I've also added some additional resources like Nevada Works, which I know many of you are familiar with, the Nevada Nursing Assistant Candidate Handbook. And I see that Debbie added the required state licensing materials like the CNA, Nevada State Board of Nursing Skills Handbook. Absolutely, that's a really great resource. And so as we go through these, like the Nevada Works or the Nevada Department of Public Safety, we have a third option, which is leaning into your industry leaders. I did a quick search and found a good number that would be able to provide sound direction as to industry growth, credentials sought after, and the specific occupational training skills and competencies required to gain entry-level employment, as well as those required to scale up along a career pathway within a company. You don't necessarily need to have a partnership to gain this information, but it is important to know where you can go for credible resources that, again, hold that authority into the issuing of licenses or credentials. So I'm looking to see, Debbie also lists ONET list of skills for careers within that industry. Yes, Debbie, it will list it, and consider that ONET might not be state specific, so you'll still need to check within your state to see if those skill sets or those licenses or certifications are valid within Nevada, but certainly ONET is a valuable resource to consider as well. Okay, so thank you for sharing. And so when I used that Florida resource on patient care technician, I drew from the Florida Department of Education website, and they have a set of curriculum frameworks ready to go, and they develop their syllabi based on the Florida State Department of Education. They reference the governing agency to pull those workforce training skills and competencies. And what I did is that I copied and pasted from that Florida resource, and I posted it on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Looking at the completed portion of the SSLO template, we see that this particular ILO is focusing on the patient care technician. I'd like to draw your attention to that bottom left that I mentioned earlier on the workforce training skills and competencies that have been added. Let's center our attention to that diamond marked as 1A. This column only lists the workforce training skills and competencies for the sake of this presentation, yet we are well aware that being a quality patient care technician involves more than just 4 competencies that you see on your screen. But of those listed, we will use the first skill set, which is why it's denoted in blue. It's that first bullet. This first bulleted competency says assist with preoperative and postoperative patient care. This is going to serve as a basis in the development of our initial ILO, our integrated learning objective, and it's denoted at the very top part here, where it says, following preoperative procedures, the student will be able to assist with preparing patients for a surgical procedure. Now, keep in mind that this ILO is not complete, and typically we would not write an integrated learning objective based on only the competencies one at a time. Normally you'd have all 3 or 4 types of competencies together, and then you develop your ILO. But I wanted to be intentional in my approach to show where this information is coming from. So we will be expanding on this ILO as we learn about the other foundational components. In other words, the integrated learning objective that I read at the very top will transform to include the additional competencies from adult education and the workforce preparation skills. So at this time, I'm going to ask if you could please use your virtual thumbs up or down if you think there is alignment between the patient care technician ILO and the workforce training skills and competencies that you see indicated in blue. And I'm going to look at my screen to see a thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't see any yet. And you could just put maybe a yes or a no in the chat as well. I'm going to take a quick sip of my tea. Okay. And Adrian, I see that your hand is raised. Did you have a question? No? Rain, Jeremy, give me a thumbs up. I see some yes from Marian, and Adrian says no, there's not an alignment. Yes, oh yes, they align. Okay, all right. Oh, I see, Adrian. No, you didn't have a question. Yes, they align. Ah, see, I read your virtual mind. Okay. All right. So, we're going to continue with this process with the remaining section. Okay. So the next step in this approach is to identify the adult education standards and align the necessary adult education skills and competencies needed to meet the standards. To do this, you'll analyze the occupational training curriculum materials and look for the adult education content standards that are embedded in the curriculum that will support mastery of the training content and that provide opportunities to develop strong academic skills that are transferable and apply in a variety of settings. You'll align those standards to adult education literacy skills that build literacy skills for course completion, but more importantly, that they support the transition to employment and ongoing educational opportunities. So how do we do this? Well, using that same template, now we're going to be focusing on the middle aspect. Notice that we have two columns to represent this section. Why do we have two columns? Because it depends on the state. In Nevada, I know that you use the College Career Readiness Standard, which you would note on that second column to your left, right? The Adult Education Content Standard. In other states, they not only focus on their state adult education content standards or the College Career Readiness Standards, but they also have separate adult education literacy skills that they focus on. Maybe they base themselves off of the National Reporting System Assessment, and they use that, they draw from that as well as a metric to meet. And that would go on that right-hand column that you see under adult education literacy skills and competencies. I'm going to demonstrate both just for funsies, but I know that you use the College and Career Readiness Standards, which we'll go into next. So where can we find these resources that speak to adult education standards? I know that you know this, but we're gonna be intentional in this approach. We have two publications that are available. One focuses on the transitional skills necessary for post-secondary, and that is the College and Career Readiness Standards that you see in blue on your screen on the left-hand side. And the guide on the right addresses the language proficiency skills of English language learners. Again, give me a thumbs up or down if you're familiar with either one of these two resources. Okay, I see some thumbs up. I see some hands raised. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Josie. Josie's showing you where I'm drawing my information from on the next, that I'm going to be using for the next slide. So thinking along the same lines as before, I will look to see which of the College and Career Readiness Standards both addresses my learners' needs and fits with the occupational context of the patient care technician. So I can integrate that component into our single set of learning objective template. So I'm going to take a moment to see what that would look like in our SSLO template. And I'm going to go ahead and pause my screen so that I could share and show you where I'm pulling that from. You could just give me a quick minute. And, oh, press the wrong button. I knew I was going to do that. Okay, let's do that one more time. Okay, so these are the, let's see. Josie, you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm using the College and Career Readiness Standards. Let me magnify this a little bit. There we go. And I am going to pull from anchor number 8. Specifically, I'm going to pull in writing that 5.8 benchmark where it says recall relevant information. And what I've done is I've copied and pasted, and I did the same thing for the workforce training piece. I'm going to embed that into my template that I was using earlier. So let me go ahead and pull my PowerPoint once again. Okay. And we're back to the PowerPoint, Josie?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, now that you know where I pulled that from, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to our next section here. We're back at the template, and we'll see how this enhances our current integrated learning objective sample on the patient care technician. We've completed the workforce training skills and competencies piece, but now we're going to look at the adult education content standards. And in this area, we are building our framework based on those workforce training competencies, right? So we start from the industry. What is the industry looking for? And you can also look at what your learners need, what area they need for remediation. Both approaches are correct. The most important aspect is that there is an alignment in what skills the students are lacking and what skills the industry is requiring. So we ask ourselves, what academic preparation is needed for a student to demonstrate mastery in assisting with a preoperative and postoperative patient care? Will this involve reading skills, writing, speaking, and listening? So you'll see that it incorporates all of the above. However, for this particular ILO, we'll be focusing solely on that writing 5.8, which is copied and pasted, and it's in blue. This says, recall relevant information from experiences or gather relevant information from print and digital sources, summarize or paraphrase information in notes and finished work, and provide a list of resources. So a word of caution. It's easy to copy and paste, but it is important to accurately document the specific skill sets and competencies that a student needs to master by the end of the course. Oftentimes, SSLOs list a multitude of competencies that might be introduced, but are not developed and certainly not enough to the mastery level. So keep this in mind as you practice developing ILOs, or if you're set out to evaluate the development of ILOs or SSLOs. So before we move on, let's compare our ILO to our adult education standards, and let's look at our unfinished ILO and have someone read it out to see what we have so far. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer who would like to read the portion that is marked as 2B. Do I have any takers, any volunteers? I'm looking. Any volunteers? No? Adrian, you want to read those out? And it's simply reading out where it says 2B, following written.
So this part here, I'm sorry, the following, I'm sorry, I was looking for 2B, I see a 2A.
On the top.
Okay, following written preoperative procedures, the student will be able to assist with preparing patients by following, I'm sorry, my screen went. Following technical instructions, conveying sequence and expectations to patient, and creating a digital report utilizing PCT terminology, summarizing steps taken, and documenting patient activity.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you did a
Oh, that's fine.
fantastic-
I had my part of the screen was covered. I'm sorry.
No, you're perfect. Thank you so much. So folks, I'm going to ask now, can you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, if you see that there's an alignment between the areas marked in blue in the adult education content standards and adult education literacy skills and competencies, only the blue sections, and you compare it to that ILO that we're still forming in 2B. So give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, I see thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. And any questions so far? Okay, I see a yes in the chat. Thank you so much. Okay. So no questions. Okay, great. It looks like we are on track to add that last piece.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Please.
So when we're looking at the adult education component of it, to say following written instructions or conveying written and oral instructions, when we're designing this, should we not be a little bit more specific when we're, especially with our English language learners, following written instructions, that's great, but I mean, how are we gonna get them to do that?
I'm glad that you asked that question. Keep in mind that in this template, we're incorporating two pieces. One is the standards, which in Nevada, you use the college and career readiness standards. So you're going to automatically default to that piece. Here, I didn't use the ELPS standards. I used the college and career readiness standard. But in some states, what they do is they'll also add in the NRS approved assessment performance benchmarks. And that is what's represented on the right. So that could be from CASAS or BEST or TAPE Class E. And so you're absolutely correct. You want to be specific, but you need to draw from the resource that you have. And so if I'm not mistaken, you're using the ELPS and the CCRS, unless there's something else that's being used. And Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, or Ariane, or no? So you're right, Adrian. I'm glad that you asked that question. Great question. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but hit me with one if it comes up. All right, next, you'll identify the workforce preparation skills and competencies related to or embedded in the occupational training. You research with the question in mind of what are the transferable skills and competencies that employers in the industry focus on from and expect from my IET program? What do they look for in an employee? You may know these as employability skills, soft skills, or 21st century skills, but separate from the industry training skills. These are the competencies that adult learners can apply to a variety of contexts outside of the classroom. What skills do you think of when we discuss workforce preparation skills? Can you post an example in the chat? What skills come to mind when you think of workforce preparation skills? Adrian says computer literacy. Thank you for sharing. I'm looking for more examples. You could also unmute if that's easier. Debbie also adds computer literacy. Thank you. Teamwork, says Gladys. Let's see, I'm looking for a couple more. How to ask questions. Yeah, that's something that we don't often think of, right? How to ask a question. Thank you for sharing. Punctuality, time management. Thank you for posting those. I really appreciate it. Communication, says Marianne. Critical thinking, problem solving, absolutely. Soft skills, yes. So some common workforce preparation skills, which you already mentioned, but it includes collaboration, problem solving, time management, speaking, leadership. Oh, Debbie, yes, conflict resolution. And there's so many more. These must be taught in the context of the workforce training instruction. You can see how these overlap with adult literacy and educational competencies. And that's okay if there's that overlap, but just be aware that they can be separate and they can be some overlap. Okay, so there are several resources to help you identify workforce preparation skills. These will be the skill sets that help shape a person's work ethic, understanding of systems, working with others, committing to professional growth, and more. For example, you can analyze the occupational training curricula itself to see where workforce preparation skills might come into play. You can consult with local industry representatives, the local workforce development board, and industry partners to identify relevant in-demand workforce preparation skills needed on the job. Other skills include the foundational skills framework, integrating academic skills with digital skills as well as transferable skills. Perhaps you're familiar, oops, got ahead. Perhaps you're familiar with the employability skills framework. The skills in this framework align closely to workforce preparation skills. Using a framework can help you identify workforce preparation skills and to facilitate the communication with a training partner, because it helps you have that common language. And the graphic that you're looking at now is from the transitions integration framework, which addresses how to navigate systems as well as develop those transferable skills that you'll need either for post-secondary or employment. Sorry, I'm trying not to cough. And finally, you'll also want to consult with ONET, which has detailed occupational descriptions for use by job seekers, workforce development, and human resources professionals, students, and researchers. Sorry about that. You'll also want to bring your professional knowledge and experience to bear to identify workforce preparation skills that will ready your learners to transition to employment or additional learning contexts. And be sure to include any skills related to required credentials and/or licensures. And so here, what I have on the screen, and it's really small on your end, I understand. I got this from ONET. And what I want to focus on is that these skills are from the work activities, not the training activities. The training activities are important. I know that someone mentioned that earlier on when we were doing that first piece of the template. But here we're drawing from those work activities that are related to the transferable skills that are not necessarily specific to that specific industry. I mean, they should be, but we're talking about those people skills, that work ethic development. And so what you see on your screen are things like evaluating information to determine compliance with standards, guiding, directing, and motivating subordinates, analyzing data or information, thinking creatively, scheduling work and activities, repairing and maintaining mechanical equipment. So again, although this is pulled from the patient care technician within ONET, and I know at the top of your screen it says nursing assistants, but there was an update that patient care technician is classified under nursing assistant in ONET, so you could see why there's that disparity. And what Josie has done is she's placed all of those resources in the chat for you so that you can explore on your own and see how you can integrate those as part of your planning process. Okay, now that we have grabbed our employability skills from ONET Online, we will plug those into the corresponding section under 3A. Again, we will only focus on one benchmark, which is indicated in blue, and knowing that there's several more that we could add. Who can read out, or who would be willing to read out that 3B at the very top, that ILO?
I will.
Thank you.
Following written preoperative procedures, the student will be able to assist with preparing patients by following technical instructions, assessing, documenting, and reporting day of patient health, conveying surgical sequence and expectations to patient, and creating a digital report utilizing PCT terminology, summarizing steps taken, and documenting patient activity with 95% accuracy.
Thank you so much, Rain. I really appreciate lending your voice to this. Thank you for sharing. So notice that we've added that 95% accuracy at the end. This is important because we want to convey how learners, instructional staff, and the IET program will be held accountable. So let's wrap things up with a few questions. Again, I asked, how we effectively integrated the workforce preparation skills and competencies into our ILO Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm looking, I see a couple of thumbs up. Okay. Thank you. Okay, our next question. Does this ILO have all three types of competencies represented? Does it have the workforce training skills, the adult education content standards, and the workforce preparation? Again, give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or put it in the chat. Yes, says Robert. Yes, says Gail. Yes, says Gladys. Yes, says Jeremy. Yes, says Debbie. Okay, and I have a yes from Marianne, but I don't know if it was for this question or the previous one. Sorry. Yes, yes. Okay, thanks, Marianne. Okay, here's the other question. It's a trick question, okay? So get your thinking caps on. Is an ILO indicative that it's supposed to be met at the end of one instructional period? Is an ILO supposed to be met, achieved, mastered by the end of one instructional period? Is that a yes or a no? Post that in the chat. No, says Adrian. No, says Robert. No. Oh, thank you for answering that. Yes, because we don't want to give the instructional staff a heart attack, right? This is not to be met within one class period, but it's an overarching goal where the individual lesson plan objectives, if you have lesson plans, or if you use those, that's where those come in. You still have your daily lesson objectives, but the ILO, it could be a daily learning lesson objective, depending how you wrote it. But can you imagine having an instructional period where they have to do all these things at 95% accuracy? That sounds like an 8-hour day to me, but it is possible, right? So I'm glad that you shared that. And Rain, I see that you put no, not necessarily. So thank you for keeping that in mind. Okay, so this ILO ensures that the integration of the AEL activities, workforce training activities, and workforce prep activities, that they occur concurrently and contextually. I'm going to move on. We're running out of time, and we're ensuring that it is measurable. So what does this look like when it's put all together? Because remember, we did one ILO. Well, what you see here in pink is a different example where we have the different competencies and how they fit into that number 2 ILO. I'm not going to read it out to you, and I'm not going to have you read it out to me. I know it's too much to read right now, but I'll share that PDF so that you could see it on your leisurely time, especially when you have insomnia. Here's another example. This is example number 3, and it's indicated by indicated in green so that you could see how it's spread out. So that when you're done, this is what that top part underneath where it says patient care technician. Each individual objective is your integrated learning objective, but together form that single set of learning objectives, which is what we reviewed today. So I want you to consider that the single set of learning objectives describe what the learner must be able to do at the end, at the completion of a major instructional, the instructional components of the lesson, and they have to integrate those 3 components. And remember that it has to have those 3 elements of the condition, the behavior, and the criteria must be indicated, right? Within those integrated learning objectives. And they have to ensure that there's vertical and horizontal alignment, ensuring that there's uniformity in the alignment. I'll answer any questions at the end. I know that we are on time, and I'm going to ask, how do you feel based on this quick run through? How are you feeling? Are you A, you're very prepared, B, somewhat prepared, C, you need a little more training and support? And Josie has kindly posted that. So someone indicated one, they're very prepared, yay. Some are indicating they're somewhat prepared. Good. Josie, can you go ahead and, let me see, we're almost there. Can you post those results? We have 56% indicating that they are somewhat prepared, and one is indicating they may need more training. Folks, we are at time. I'm going to go ahead and advance my slides to share that we have one more resource, and I'm going to ask Josie to post that resource where you can find the toolkit that we use today along with other items. So please explore that. You could find PowerPoint templates, handouts, case studies, templates, really good, great stuff. And I'll be seeing you on the next month, later this month, actually in April, for Introduction to Lesson Planning. That one is an 1.5-hour session, I believe. And then we'll be learning about internationally trained professionals in May. I'll be sharing those Zoom links as well as the session descriptions with y'all. And so with that, I thank you for your time. My apologies for going over. And I will share that PowerPoint out today, Robert. I'll share it through Nancy. And then she'll make the magic happen. So I'll share it with Nancy. So thank you all so much. I'm gonna stop sharing and see if there's any questions. I'll be here. If you want to ask me any questions or have any
I want to say thank you, Liz. I did not know you had strep throat. I know you had a cold. So thank you for being here, keeping the session, providing all this great information. And I know on behalf of the group, we're very thankful to have you. And Josie, thank you for running a smooth webinar as always.
And I
Thank you
just
so
have a
much.
quick
It's always
question
a
about
pleasure.
the recording. We'll have access to the recording, yes? Okay. I think I need to share this with others.
Great.
I will
Thank
make
you all
the
for being here.
assumption that this
Yes.
will also be put on our website along with the other resources that we have.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then I'll leave you to the rest of your day. Thank you so much and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Y'all take care.